Frid och shalom älskade vänner, då sänder vi här en uppdatering och vi ska ta och titta på en video först här med Avi Abelov som är i Miami och talar här till judiska ungdomar om situationen i Israel, och han säger ungefär samma sak som Amir gör. Sen kommer det ett spännande klipp här att klimatförändringarna beror på andra saker än koldioxidutsläppen. Och Gud är en så stor Gud så att han har börjat röra vid himmelens makter tydligen. Det är inte bara att klimatet förändras här på jorden, utan det sker i yttersta rymden också. Det här var intressanta saker. Men klippet kommer att förklara det. Gud välsigna er, så hörs vi vidare sedan. Amen.
New York City. Baruch Hashem, I was Zocher. I had the merit of moving to Israel, making Aliyah when I was 16 years old. My wife and I live there today, 4 kids. Our oldest got married first week of the war. That's a half a year ago. He just celebrated half a year anniversary with his wife. After I served in the Army, I served in the Golani Brigade. I ended up moving back here and living in New York City, going to school in New York City, bachelor's and master's degree, and then returned back to Israel. That was like 22 years ago. So during this war, I was called up already October 7th. My son was in the Army. He's in Sayeret Tzanchanim, the paratrooper commando unit, and he knew he was called in immediately to have to go down into Gaza. He's been in and out. My unit is in Judea and Samaria. So I just want to give you a few anecdotes about what's going on with the Jewish people in Israel today, connected to here, and leave with inspiring, I hope you'll be inspired by my uniform. The Jewish people in the land of Israel today are more united than ever before. Don't listen to the headlines. Don't listen to the news. Don't listen to the headlines. What happened on October 7th was a watershed moment, not just for the Jewish people, not just for the land of Israel, but all of humanity, but specifically for the Jewish people in Israel. It was a wake-up moment, because up until that moment, everyone thought in Israel, well, either you're for peace or you're against peace. Either you're for the settlements in Judea and Samaria, or you're against the settlements in Judea and Samaria. Either you're religious or you're secular. October 7th, our enemies reminded us that they look at us regardless of what our political opinions are, what our religious level is. They're not killing us because of where we live. They're killing us because of who we are, because we're Jews. So right now you have an atmosphere in the land of Israel that despite the headlines and despite little protests here and there, the majority of Am Yisrael is united. And when people ask me, okay, Avi, when is this war going to end? It's not going to end tomorrow. It's not going to end in a month. I don't even know if it's going to end in a half a year. Because this war is really only going to end, despite whatever pressure we get from the world, despite whatever pressure we get from the Biden administration. This war only is going to end when Be'ezrat Hashem, with God's help, everyone down south moves back to their home, and everyone up north moves back to their home, because I don't know how many people know. There are close to 100,000 Jews up at the northern border that are evacuated from their homes for half a year, as well as the tens of thousands from the southern border who still have not been living in their homes. The war does not end until they all return to their homes without any fear whatsoever of anything ever happening again like October 7th. That's when the war ends. I don't care what ceasefire, I don't care Rafiach, not Rafiach, I don't care what pressure, how the world pressures us. The people in Israel today are united, understanding the war doesn't end until everyone goes home without any fear again. So what I want everyone to know, if nothing else, is one, we are winning, because Am Yisrael as a people, we are at a place where we have never been since the state of Israel was created, if we really think about the feeling in the land today. And we will win, despite everything going on. Amen. All right, very important. 2 short stories. Number 1, my wife and I, we have 4 boys. Oldest just got married. He's in the reserves already. Number 2 is the one in the paratroop commando unit. 2 younger boys. one in pre-military, he's in a Mechina program, pre-military academy, and the fourth is in high school. One thing I teach my boys, I brought them up all their lives, is understanding that even though Israel has a mandatory law to serve in the IDF, to us, serving in the Israeli army is not mandatory, but it's a schut. It's a privilege. Why is it a privilege? Because I teach my boys, and I try to give this message over to everyone and to every Jew. As a student of history and a student of Jewish history, it is hard to ignore the fact that we are blessed to live in one of the first generations in over 2,000 years of Jews, after 2,000 plus years of exile and persecution over and over. You guys are all living in Miami today. Your grandparents didn't live in Miami. And their grandparents probably didn't even live where their grandparents lived. And their grandparents didn't live where the Jewish people for 2,000 plus years. We are the wandering Jew. And I'm going to tell you something. If you guys think that you living here in Miami, that your grandkids are going to live in Miami, forget about it. That's not history. That's not Jewish history. And you can just see what's going on in America today to know that the America that I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s is not the America that you and your children are going to have. Not even the America you're experiencing now in Miami. Things change. And the Jewish people are always wondering, but we are the first generation to be blessed to live in our ancestral homeland with sovereignty in our ancestral homeland, with all the problems. And I know some of you are Israeli or your parents are Israelis. There are plenty of problems in Israel, but we're not supposed to be living in Israel because it's perfect. We're supposed to be living in Israel because we as Jews are supposed to be there as Jews to make it the Or LaGoyim that it's supposed to be. That's the challenge of being a Jew. And with the privilege of being able to defend ourselves that our grandparents didn't have, that our great-grandparents didn't have, and that Jews for 2,000 years did not have. Hence, regardless if there's a law in Israel to serve, for us, it's a privilege. And my boys are serving, and even though I'm past the age of not having to serve anymore, I continue to serve in my Miluim unit. As long as I give value to my unit, I'm continuing. And it's my mother and my wife, they're like, what the heck are you doing, Avi? You're like an old geezer already. I'm like, you guys know me. I'm not giving up my privilege of being able to serve the Jewish people until I'm no longer of value. Story number 2, more has to do with the information war. All right, and then I'll end with the inspiring thing. I don't want to take too much of your time. There's a program in Israel, in the Israeli army, called the Nativ program. Anyone familiar with the Nativ program? Who? What is it? Right. What's your name? Yael, okay? Yael shared with us. The Nativ program is a special program in the IDF where Israeli citizens who are not Jewish according to Torah law, which means it's mostly descendants of Ukrainians or Russians who the lineage got all messed up, unfortunately, because of Russia, the Soviet Union. And they're Israeli citizens. They're living Jewish lives as in Israel, but they're not halachically Jewish according to Torah law. So in the army, they can learn about Judaism and go through a conversion process. Not forced. They choose what they want to do. Part of the program is they get to spend a Shabbat at a religious family's house to understand what is this Shabbat thing that Jews do. So we live in the community of Efrat. I'm what I call a proud resettler. Anyone familiar with the Judean hills? We live overlooking Bethlehem. We see Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, from our porch. And every few months, we get to host one of these Nativ programs. And again, usually Russian, Ukrainian, sometimes we have girls, sometimes we have guys. One Shabbat, we have all the guys sitting around the table. I think we had 5 guys that Shabbat. Go around the table, what's your name, where are you from, what's your story? One guy's name is Maxim, another Igor, right? And then the guy right opposite me, what's your name? Muhammad. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on here? I'm like, all right, Muhammad, where are you from? That's what I'm thinking. Yafo, Natzrat, Akko, Jerusalem, Gaza. Gaza, right? Wait a second. I have an IDF soldier converting to Judaism who's a Muslim from Gaza. I'm like, what the hell? What's your story? And he tells me the following. His father was an employee for the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. In 2005, after Israel unfortunately expelled 10,000 Jews and destroyed 21 Jewish communities and handed it over to the terrorist organization called the PLO, or the Palestinian Authority. 2007, Hamas had a military coup against the Palestinian Authority, literally throwing Palestinian Authority officials off of rooftops to kill them. All right? You want to know why we're not going to have peace with them? It's because they don't even have peace within each other. His father's life was in danger, and he knew Hamas was trouble, so he ended up helping the Israeli army secretly with information about Hamas in Gaza. Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, saw that his life was even in more danger, and all of his family's life was in danger, so Israel smuggled the family into Israel and gave them Israeli citizenship as a thank you for his help to Israel. So I'm like, Muhammad, that's an unbelievable story. Well, why serve in the Israeli army? I'm like, you could say thank you to the Jewish state of Israel, saved your life. What? He goes, you don't understand. Me and all three of my brothers, because they're four brothers, and he's the youngest, all served in the Israeli army because they understood that all their lives they were taught by their Muslim teachers in Gaza that the Jews and the Jewish state of Israel want to kill them and they're evil. And here, it was the Jews who saved their lives from their neighbors, family members, fellow Muslims who wanted to kill them. So we want to say thank you and serve in the Israeli army. All four served in the Israeli army. Then I said, okay, but why convert? You don't have to convert. You know how hard it is to be a Jew? And it's 613 commandments, and we're hated around the world no matter what we do. He goes, you don't understand. All our lives we were taught by our Muslim clerics that Judaism is evil, Judaism is bad, Judaism wants to kill us, and we end up learning that Islam taught us to sanctify death, and Judaism teaches to sanctify life. Me and all three of my older brothers all converted to be Jews. That one little story tells the whole truth about the Middle East and our conflict that you don't hear at all in any of the media sources. Israel is the best country in the Middle East. Woo! The only country where a Sunni Muslim, a Shiite Muslim, a gay Muslim, a female Muslim, an atheist born Muslim can live with freedom and equality together with every Jew, Christian, and minority. And yet we're the ones called apartheid. We're the ones called genocide. We're saving the lives. We're looking after the Arab citizens. Everything you hear in the news is a lie. That one story tells the whole truth. Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, is the solution to the Middle East. It's the solution to peace. And now I want to leave finally with my uniform. Because I'm telling you about the unity of the Jewish people in the land of Israel today, and the fact that many Jews in Israel now understand, and many soldiers now understand, we're being killed because we are Jews. And do you know what the name of the war is according to Hamas? What's the war? What's the name?
The Al-Aqsa flood.
They call it the Al-Aqsa flood. Meaning, Al-Aqsa is Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. They're fighting for Jerusalem. They're not fighting because of Gaza. They're fighting out of a religious conviction to get rid of all of us, out of all of Israel and Jerusalem. And it's waking up the Jews to realize, wait a second, why are they fighting over Jerusalem and we're not? So now you have Israeli soldiers with uniforms. What's on the patch? What's the picture on the patch? The Beit HaMikdash. Now you have Israeli soldiers fighting with patches like the temple and Mashiach and Am Yisrael Chai, because we are owning our Jewish identity once again as a unified people. Despite our religious levels being different, our political levels being different, we are all Jews back in our homeland for our purpose to fulfill ourselves as the Jewish people, which in the end is what? It's also building the Beit HaMikdash. Shalom everyone, thanks for having me.
Ja, fridälskade vänner. Jag sitter här med en profetisk uppdatering idag och tittar ut över Vänerns strand och läser Guds ord och jublar inför honom faktiskt i tårar. När jag får se Guds väldiga storhet. Att vi här nere är ju som små dammkorn i jämförelse med denna väldige Gud som har upprättat allting genom sitt ord och håller samman allting genom sitt eget ord, står det. Och när Gud får uppenbara sitt ord för oss, då får vi ljus. Och det är underbart för vår själ. Och vi läser ifrån Lukas 21 och 25 några verser här. Tecken ska visa sig i solen och i månen och i stjärnorna. Stjärnorna där är ju alla planeter och kometer och allting. Och på jorden ska folken gripas av ångest och stå rådlösa. Alltså man ska inte förstå vad som händer. För havet och bränningarnas dån, det innebär ju väldiga stormar, orkaner och allting då. Jag tror att det här kan både vara bokstavligen men också andligen. Människor ska ge upp andan av skräck i väntan på det som ska komma över världen. Ty himlens makter eller krafter ska skakas. Då ska man se människosonen komma i ett moln med stor makt och härlighet. Men när detta börjar ske, lägg märke till det, börjar ske, då rätar vi på oss som tror och lyfter upp våra huvuden, ty då närmar sig vår förlossning. Alltså den som tror på Jesus, han har ju fått del av den här förlossningen redan. Men det ska komma en tid med vi når en full förlossning, står det här. Det grekiska ordet för förlossning betyder fullständig förlossning. Det betyder ju alltså att vi får våra uppståndelsekroppar med andra ord. Semeion, som är tecken här, det är ju inget annat än ett tecken på att Guds rådslut går i uppfyllelse. Det var ju därför Jesus gjorde tecken, för att han själv är ju hela Guds rådslut. Det måste vi förstå. Och när han kommer tillbaka igen så är ju Guds rådslut fullbordat och vi får vår fulla förlossning. Det kan vi alltså inte få innan tiden är slut som vissa lär. Det är totalt omöjligt enligt Guds ord. Så vi får pröva allting som sägs ute i våra kyrkor av de här som reser runt och är så frimodiga och har tider och stunder helt klart och lägger fram. Jag skulle vilja uppmuntra er att pröva vad som sägs. Och så fortsätter vi och läser i Uppenbarelseboken 10. Och vi läser ifrån vers 5. Och ängeln som jag såg stå på havet och på jorden lyfte sin högra hand upp mot himlen och svor vid honom som lever i evigheternas evigheter, vid honom som har skapat himlen och vad där i är, och jorden och vad därpå är, och havet och vad där i är, och sa: ingen tid ska mer givas, alltså kronos, minuter, sekunder, timmar, år och dagar, utan i de dagarna, eller på den tiden, då skall den sjunde ängelns röst höras, och när det sker att han stöter i sin basun, då är Guds hemliga rådslut fullbordat, i enlighet med det glada bud som han har förkunnat för sina tjänare, profeterna, alltså apostlarna då, och Jesu undervisning. Och då kan det ju naturligtvis inte handla om någonting annat än uppståndelsen från de döda och den fulla förlossningen. Och det här kan vi ju inte förstå om vi inte förstår att det handlar om en process. Men när detta börjar ske, jaha, då är det någonting som Gud kommer att uppenbara alltså för oss, som gör att vi förstår att Jesus kommer och att uppståndelsen ska ske. Då ser vi ju att eftersom det vid sjunde basunen är fullbordat och vi ska börja se något, då förstår vi att sigillen, basunerna och vredeskålarna måste ju komma först. Mycket riktigt, och då förstår vi också att Uppenbarelseboken inte kan läsas i en ordning, utan det är olika profetiska bilder taget ur profeterna i första hand och så publicerat här i olika kapitel och verser. Och det som gjorde mig så tagen här på morgon och som sände in mig i en sånt jubel inför denna stora Gud som vi tillber, det är att nu pekar det på en stor förändring i hela vårt solsystem. Exakt vad Jesus sa. Vi skulle titta på planeterna, va? Och nu, det som sker nu är utöver det normala, säger man. Vi ska titta på ett klipp som bevisar att solens strålning och magnetfält är det som påverkar hela jordens vädersystem, som en professor säger, och ingenting annat. Och då läser vi vår bibel och då kan vi förstå att det är alltså Gud som genom sitt ord förklarar för oss, vi som inte förstår vad det är som håller på att ske. Och nu vill vi läsa lite i Jobs bok, denna bok som inte så kanske många läser och kan förstå, men det här finns ju som visdom. Och då ser vi att det man för fram i Agenda 2030 är en lögn. Men Gud tillåter det här, och det gör han för att döma den här världen och fånga dem som inte vill tro på evangeliet i lögnens snara. Och det måste ju komma först. Det ser vi i andra Thessalonikbrevet 2. Och vi läser då dessa verser i Jobs bok som är oerhört mäktigt. Vilken Gud vi har och tillber, vänner. Han har givetvis makt. Han som styr hela universum i minsta atom, att bevara dig och mig till den dagen då han kommer tillbaka. Jobb 36 och 20. Längta inte efter den natt då folken ska ryckas från sin plats. Ja, det kommer alltså en tid när det ska ske. Men det är inte det vi ska längta efter. Vi ska ju längta efter att vinna så många som möjligt. Det är ju det Jesus vill då. Ta dig tillvara och vänd dig inte till ondska som du valt istället för lidande. Se, Gud är upphöjd i sin kraft. Var finns en lärare som han? Ja, ingenstans. Vem har anvisat honom hans väg, och vem kan säga, du har gjort orätt? Kom ihåg att upphöja hans gärningar, dem som människorna sjunger om, som alla människor ser på, som de skådar om en i fjärran. Ja, det vill säga då hur han har skapat himmelen och jorden. Han har nämligen vittnat genom detta om att det är han som har skapat allting. Se, Gud är för hög för vårt förstånd. Ja, det står också i Jesaja 55. Hans år är fler än någon kan utransaka. Lyssna nu. Vattnets droppar drar han uppåt. De strilar ner från dimman eller från molnen. Från skyarna strömmar det ner och dryper ner över många människor. Men kan någon förstå hur molnen breder ut sig eller förstå dundret från hans hydda? Se, han sprider sina blixtars ljus omkring sig och döljer havets djup. Till genom dem dömer han folken, men ger också mat i överflöd. Han höljer sina händer i blixtarnas ljus och befaller dem att träffa sitt mål. Hans dunder bär bud om honom, och boskapen vet vad som är på färde. Och när vi nu tittar på de här klippen så, ja, man blir så förundrad, för den här professorn som har lagt fram den här vetenskapen, han har enligt Bibeln fullständigt rätt. Det är alltså rymdvädret och solen då som är i centrum i hela den här universum som styr allt annat, och inte alls vad de här köpta vetenskapsmännen nu påstår. Det är dags att vakna, vänner. Andra Thessalonikbrevet står att vi ska tro på en lögn som framförs. Inte vi givetvis som tror på Jesus och Bibeln, men de ska tro på en lögn. Så det ser ut som hela jorden kommer att delas upp här i de som tror på lögnen och de som tror på sanningen. Gud välsigne er, kära vänner, så hörs vi i nästa uppdatering. Amen.
On the far side, where helioseismology suggests big sunspots exist. Now we have those big sunspots facing Earth as well, but they have been pretty inactive due to a lack of magnetic complexity. That may be changing in the big sunspot group this morning, where opposing polarities are beginning to shear near the center. That could lead to larger flares. The good news is that the sunspot has crossed central heliographic longitudes and is beginning to turn towards the limb. Folks, last night's special video described the unprecedented solar storm impact to the ionosphere from last month, and this morning, that top team that confirmed the results of solar storm impact to the global electric circuit aren't waiting for peer review. They report directly to spaceweather.com and Dr. Tony Phillips that our planet got zapped again in that storm. The planet took a 10 to 15% surge in the electric circuit through the atmosphere. As we have described many times, this circuit is critical to various aspects of atmospheric dynamics, and I just gotta love how Dr. Phillips does not care about mainstream politics. Straight up says this impacts rain and lightning. We specifically covered that recently in another special video, and as those of you who read this month's issue of Observer Review learned, the planet had wild weather in the wake of the solar superstorm last month, including record-breaking floods. Quick stop at the moon next, where the lander has detected negative ions for the first time. These are impossible to spot from lunar orbit, but now are the focus of intense analysis in upcoming papers. Electrodynamics of a similar kind to what we literally just described on Earth, as these are driven by solar wind impact to the moon, just on a much more severe scale. Quick jump back in time. This Earth changes and signs of the impending magnetic pole shift, but it's not just the Earth. The entire solar system is shifting in a similar way. We've gone over this, but here's a recap, and we'll follow it with the newest evidence. The sun's magnetic field is changing just like Earth's is, and with it, the helium abundance in the corona and possibly the solar wind. That last part is awaiting secondary confirmation. Mercury is the lone outlier in the entire solar system. We need to wait for Bepi-Colombo data in the next few years. But Venus's fastest winds have increased 33%, and that was reported a decade ago. They may be even faster now. Mars has notable climatological, seismological, and rotation speed changes. It's now thought to have an active mantle, and while scientists mostly believe they made a mistake in years past when they thought the planet was dead, it is just as likely that the planet has recently woken up. Jupiter's changes are perhaps the most dramatic. Cloud bands, major storms, and its radio emission, driven by its magnetic field, are changing. Direct evidence of the shift there. Saturn's superstorm was on a reliable 30-year cycle until it came a decade early. Uranus has had record storms and aurora, indicating a systemic change there. Neptune's well-known storm patterns totally reversed, and a dramatic cooling is occurring. Pluto lost a fifth of its atmosphere in just 1 year, and the interplanetary space is becoming dustier, with more ions and neutrals and various pressure fronts and shocks noted by Voyager. The working hypothesis is that the solar system is taking impact from the galactic current sheet and the galactic magnetic reversal. In the last year, we've had 3 significant new updates to the list. Neptune's cloud changes are far too dramatic to just be a function of the solar cycle, as was implied by NASA here. In fact, they imply a much more dramatic shift. Jupiter's new jet stream feature would certainly have been noticed before if it was a solar cycle pattern. It's almost certainly another atmospheric change on our gas giant. And of course, just this week, we learned that the polar infrared brightness at Uranus has more than doubled in a 7-year span. Now, while minor changes in this are expected over its entire orbit around the sun, that takes decades, and it isn't expected to be this extreme over its entire orbit. Yet another shift on Uranus. It is one thing to know Earth is changing magnetically, but to grasp the totality of the scenario, you need the bigger picture. You can learn much more.
Då fortsätter vi rapportera ifrån våra oväder över Europa, och den här gången är det Frankrike som drabbas. Gode Gud, när jag ser det här då tänkte man ju på att man får ju verkligen be om beskydd. Det var ju några oväder över Stockholm för bara några veckor sedan. Att vi blir bevarade. Gud välsigna er. Ja, då kommer det in ytterligare en nyhet här i Expressen som bara bekräftar detta som vi har sagt. Det står så här: kaosväder, extrem hetta, åskoväder och flodvågor. Kaosväder slår till mot stora delar av Europa samtidigt som sommarens turistsäsong tar sin början. Förutom extrem hetta drabbas Sydeuropa också av åskoväder, översvämningar och tsunamiliknande flodvågor. Detta börjar ju mer och mer likna Bibelns budskap om ändens tid.
Good afternoon, folks. Well, it has happened again. The sun gave Earth a little nudge, and the Earth was significantly disturbed. We'll go over this and more here, starting with what happened today. We hit level 4 storm conditions this morning, and there's absolutely no reason why that should have happened. Nobody was expecting this. Not me, not NASA, not NOAA, nobody. The sun had a filament release on the departing limb on the right about 3 days ago, and it did send a CME into space that was mostly directed away from the Earth. Coronagraphs showed the chance of a glancing blow, a little nudge off the edge of that eruption. If it had been a head-on blast aimed directly at Earth, maybe we could have expected a level 2 or 3 solar storm. Maybe, but not level 4. And definitely not from a blast that wasn't even directly fired at us. We took the very edge of the eruption cloud, pretty much exactly as the Enlil spiral had predicted would happen. But of course, that's where the accuracy of the predictions ended. Whether it was the eruption itself, the direction of the blast, or the solar wind data we showed you this morning from when the impact began, nothing about this event says we should have taken this high of a disruption. Just to give you a bit of a better idea of that, here are the last 3 updates from the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center. Level 1 storm expected. Then, within the hour, levels 3 and 4 were reached, more than 2 orders of magnitude higher than forecasts. Folks, space weather's not an exact science, but it's not supposed to be like shooting at a black cat in an unlit coal mine. While most in the solar activity community are wondering what just happened, observers already know. We have shown and described and predicted these types of events would occur regularly for almost a decade. Earth's magnetic field is weakening in the magnetic pole shift, the geomagnetic excursion, and this is as good an example as any that our planet has become exceedingly vulnerable to the sun. We're lucky it was not a bigger event. And this brings me back to last month's solar storms. We took a triple impact from X1 through X3 events, and despite their fairly regular and expected magnitude in terms of solar eruptions, the solar storm conditions at Earth broke records. Some of the aurora even outperformed the 1859 Carrington event superflare. This would not have been possible without the weakening magnetic field of Earth. But after that sunspot turned out of view, it unleashed an X12 on the far side, and folks, I can say we are very lucky. If that had been included among the other impacts we did take, if it had not been on the far side, that would probably have been game over for the global grids. Back to the Stone Age we'd go. This is happening far too often, the obvious weakness of our planetary magnetic defense. We've still got a lot of sunspot maximum left to go.